Hi everyone, welcome to today's Current Affairs Daily Notes. Today's topic is Aksai Chin. I'm Ritrisha from GK Today and let us begin. India's External Affairs Minister Subrahmanyam Jaishankar began a three-day visit to China on 11th August in an effort to increase the friendly relation between the two nations and to ease tensions between the countries after New Delhi's drastic move to end the special constitutional status of Jammu and Kashmir. Beijing has sharply criticized India's decision, saying it undermined China's territorial sovereignty. So today we are going to discuss the following. What is Aksai Chin? What is the geography of this region? How were the borders established? What is the history of this dispute? And what is the current story? To begin with, what is Aksai Chin? Aksai Chin is a disputed border area between China and India. It is one of the two largest disputed border areas between China and India. India claims Aksai Chin as the easternmost part of Jammu and Kashmir state, now in Ladakh Union Territory. China claims that Aksai Chin is a part of the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. The line that separates Indian administration areas of Jammu and Kashmir from Aksai Chin is known as the line of actual control and is concurrent with the Chinese Aksai Chin claim line. In 1962, China and India fought a brief war in Aksai Chin and Arunachal Pradesh, but in 1993 and 1996, the two countries signed agreements to respect the line of actual control. So what is the geography of this region? Aksai Chin covers an area of about 37,244 square kilometers. The area is largely a vast high altitude desert with a low point on the Karakash River at about 4,300 meter above sea level. In the southwest mountains up to 7,000 meter extending southwest from the Depsang Plains from the de facto border line of actual control between Aksai Chin and Jammu and Kashmir. In the north, the Kunlun Range separates Aksai Chin from the Tarim Basin, where the rest of the Khotan country is situated. According to a recent detailed Chinese map, no roads cross the Kunlun Range within Khotan Prefecture, and only one track does so over the Hindutash Pass. Aksai Chin area has a number of endorheic basins with many salt or soda lakes. The major salt lakes are Surig Yelkhaning Kol, Sosang, Aksai Chin Lake, Hongshanhu, etc. Much of the northern part of Aksai Chin is referred to as the Soda Plains, located near Aksai Chin's largest river, the Karakash, which receives meltwater from a number of glaciers, crosses the Kunlun farther northwest in the Pishan country and enters the Tarim Basin, where it serves as one of the main sources of water for Karakax and Khotan counties. The western part of Aksai Chin region is drained by the Tarim River. The eastern part of the region contains several small endorheic basins. The largest of them is the Aksai Chin Lake, which is fed by the river of the same name. The region as a whole receives little precipitation as the Himalayas and the Karakoram block the rains from the Indian monsoon. Now, how were these borders established? William Johnson, a civil servant with the Survey of India, proposed the Johnson Line in 1865, which put Aksai Chin in Kashmir. This was the time of the Dungan Revolt when China did not control most of the Xinjiang. So this line was never presented to the Chinese. In 1897, a British military officer, Sir John Ardagh, proposed a boundary line along the crest of the Kunlun Mountains north of the Yarkand River. At the time, Britain was concerned at the danger of Russian expansion as China weakened, and Ardagh argued that his line was more defensible. The Ardagh line was effectively a modification of the Johnson line and became known as the Johnson-Ardagh line. In 1893, Hang Te-chen, a senior Chinese official at St. Petersburg, gave maps of the region to George Macartney, the British Consul General at Kashgar, which coincided in broad details. In 1899, Britain proposed a revised boundary initially suggested by Macartney and developed by the Governor-General of India, Lord Elgin. This boundary placed the Lingzi Tang Plains, which are south of Latsang Range in India, and Aksai Chin proper, which is north of Latsang Range in China. This border along the Karakoram Mountains was proposed and supported by British officials for a number of reasons. The Karakoram Mountains formed a natural boundary which would set the British borders up to the Indus River watershed while leaving the Tarim River watershed in Chinese control, and Chinese control of this tract would present a further obstacle to Russian advance in Central Asia. The British presented this line, known as the Macartney-MacDonald Line, to the Chinese in 1899 in a note by Sir Claude MacDonald. The Qing government did not respond to the note, and the British took that as Chinese acquiescence. Although no official boundary had been negotiated, China believed that this had been accepted as the boundary. Now, what is the history of this dispute? On August 28, 1959, the then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru made a statement to Lok Sabha stating that the Chinese had moved into the territory of Aksai Chin. 3 days later, he acknowledged to the Rajya Sabha that they had built a road through the region. Upon independence in 1947, the Government of India had used the Johnson Line as the basis for its official boundary in the west, which included the Aksai Chin region. From the Karakoram Pass, the Indian claim line extends northeast of Karakoram Mountains through the salt flats of Aksai Chin to set a boundary at the Kunlun Mountains and incorporating part of the Karakash River and Yarkand River watersheds. From there, it runs east along the Kunlun Mountains before turning southwest through the Aksai Chin salt flats, through the Karakoram Mountains and then to Pangong Lake. On 1st July 1954, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru wrote a memo directing that the maps of India be revised to show definite boundaries on all frontiers. Up to this point, the boundary in the Aksai Chin sector, based on the Johnson Line, had been described as undemarcated. Now, during 1950s, the People's Republic of China built a 1200-kilometer road connecting Xinjiang and Western Tibet, of which 179 km ran south of the Johnson Line through the Aksai Chin region claimed by India. Aksai Chin was easily accessible to the Chinese but was more difficult for the Indians on the other side of the Karakorams to reach. The Indians did not learn of the existence of the road until 1957, which was confirmed when the road was shown on Chinese maps published in 1958. And as we already read, Jawaharlal Nehru acknowledged it to the Parliament in 1959. Now, the Indian position, as stated by the Prime Minister then, was that Aksai Chin was part of Ladakh region of India for centuries, and that this northern border was a firm and definite one which was not open to discussion with anybody. Now, the Chinese minister Zhou Enlai argued that the western border had never been delimited and that Macartney-MacDonald line, which left the Aksai Chin within Chinese borders, was the only line ever proposed to a Chinese government, and that the Aksai Chin was already under Chinese jurisdiction and that negotiations should take into account the status quo. The Sino-Indian War, also known as Indo-China War and Sino-Indian border conflict, happened due to this. This was a war between China and India that occurred in 1962. Now, the cause of the war was a dispute over the sovereignty of the widely separated Aksai Chin and the Arunachal Pradesh border regions. Aksai Chin, claimed by India to belong to Kashmir and by China to be a part of Xinjiang, contains an important road link that connects the Chinese region of Tibet and Xinjiang, and it is of utmost importance to China in order for them to maintain control of Tibet. Now, China's construction of this road was the trigger for this conflict. However, as we know, the outcome of the war wasn't very friendly for us. So, what is the current story? China has recently supported Pakistan on the Kashmir issue at a closed-door informal session of the UN Security Council, and they have raked up the status of Aksai Chin, a territory in Ladakh which is now occupied by Beijing. The Chinese permanent representative in the UN claimed that the government's decision to abrogate Article 370 challenged China's sovereign interests and violated bilateral agreements on maintaining peace and stability in the border region. Now, Beijing has decided to raise the issue at the UN despite Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar allaying fears that redesignating Ladakh as a union territory would not impact the actual line of control, and that Delhi was not making any additional territorial claims with regard to China. However, for now, it remains a disputed area. despite Home Minister Amit Shah recently reiterating India's stand that Jammu and Kashmir territory includes the Pak-occupied area of Kashmir as well as Aksai Chin. That's all for this video. If you want to read more about this topic, simply follow the link in our description below. And if you liked our efforts, please do like, share and subscribe. Until next time, goodbye and good luck.